Yes, guys, what's happening? And welcome back to the channel and welcome to today's live stream where we're going to be discussing the winners and losers of the transfer market across Europe. So done a video on the Premier League winners and losers the other day, so head back to the channel to check that out. We're going to be discussing all things Europe in the transfer window. And there's no better man to join me than the Euro expert himself, Alex Barker. Alex, thanks for joining me as always, mate. I'm looking forward to get stuck into this. Yeah, let's kick things off then. I mean, Juventus over in Serie A been struggling this season under Max Allegri. Still outside the top four. I think they're a point behind Atalanta, even though Atalanta have got a game in hand, and obviously recorded big financial losses. So I was quite surprised, like many people, how they've managed to afford Dusan Vlahovic. I think they 75 million euros potentially rise into that from Fiorentina. Obviously, a fantastic centre forward. Did some other good bits of business as well. Dennis Zakaria, the Swiss midfielder, coming in for cheap from Gladbach. I think 8 million euros that fee could rise to. And they've managed to shift out some squad players that were on big wages, the likes of Aaron Ramsey, Kulusevski, and Bentancur as well. Firstly, your thoughts on the Fiorentina's move, Dusan Vlahovic to Juventus. Are you surprised at that move at all? I mean, I'm not particularly surprised. I think Juventus, not, how they're doing at the moment, not doing that well. But like Bayern Munich, they've just got that pool that they can just sign the best players in Serie A, regardless of how they're doing.
Yeah, and I was looking actually at the press conference comments from Vlahovic and Zakaria as well this morning on La Gazzetta dello Sport, and it really goes in line with what you just said about their pool. Zakaria, he said himself, and Vlahovic said something similar. Juventus, like, you grow up, you idolise them, even though like you don't necessarily support them. They're just always a club with that pull, and joining them's it's almost like a childhood dream. So I'm also not too surprised with Vlahovic going. I mean, this sort of lied just because I did expect it to go to a Premier League club, but I'm not surprised now, if that makes sense. Vlahovic went to the best team in Italy. There we go. But yeah, it's the reason they funded it, I think, is kind of how you touched on. They managed to get their exits out. There's even some smaller exits as well, like Mohamed Hattaran, which is, that whole thing is quite sad if you want to go into it. It's interesting, but hopefully it gets a happy ending.
He's joined Ajax, hasn't he, on loan?
Yeah, so what happened was he was at PSV in the last season, and he was doing really well at PSV. He was like a 17, 18-year-old, but at age 17, his dad died, and then he's kind of spiraled into sort of depression. When he got a move away from PSV after he fell out of the coach, he went to Juventus. He got sent on loan to Sampdoria. Turned up Sampdoria after a week, was like, I don't like it here, I want to go. Then he went off the radar. No one knew where he was for a month. He was back in the Netherlands. He's basically forced Juventus' hand to say, hey, let me go to the Netherlands. I'm not playing in Italy anymore. So now Juventus have let him go on a loan of an option of £2.3 million to buy. In all things considered, they've probably done well to get that for a player who's literally not only didn't want to play there, but by seems his account just couldn't play there. So they've kind of squeezed this business out of everyone, like Kulusevski and Bentancur to Spurs. They've done quite well with their finances, I think, and I think they've actually had quite a good transfer window.
Yeah, I mean, back to Dusan Vlahovic, obviously, for those people that have kind of been living under a rock, not really heard of him, 21 years of age, Serbian centre-forward. Last year matched Cristiano Ronaldo's goal tally for most goals in a calendar year in Serie A with 33. Kind of the next big centre-forward coming through, not named Erling Haaland, I suppose.
Yeah.
He's done very well, but I mean, obviously, Premier League clubs were interested, particularly Arsenal. I know Spurs were interested as well, but I could never really see that happening. But Arsenal, he was their number one target, concrete interest. Juventus and Fiorentina have done business before. I'm not sure how the relationship is between the two clubs. Some players have moved on from there. I mean, Chiesa has gone there. I think Juventus is actually still paying for Chiesa. Obviously, I think, did Kulusevski go from Fiorentina as well?
No, he went from Atalanta.
Yeah, but obviously Chiesa went. Baggio back in the day went as well. That wasn't that popular. I'm not sure how popular Dusan Vlahovic is now with kind of the Fiorentina hierarchy as such, because just bring up a thing that I've seen from Fabrizio Romano earlier.
I wonder if it's the same thing I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah, his Vlahovic deal was full of dishonesty and liars. Open talks of English clubs. Every time a new offer came up, Vlahovic and his agent said no. The plan was the same as Mbappe with PSG: leave as a free agent and make money. How do you feel like Vlahovic and his entourage have kind of handled themselves within this move? Because that comes across pretty damning from the president of Fiorentina.
It's very damning, but I will say so. The context in Italy is I've been actually reading the book about Italian football and the downfall and the rise of Serie A. It's like only released in 2018, so it's quite modern. And in Italy, they really value sort of loyalty. It's like in their culture, it's quite a big thing. They trust, and they also have like this thing of don't trust anyone as well until they prove otherwise. So I think with whatever happened with Vlahovic, wherever he went, it was going to mean issues. It's sort of like Lukaku in like leaving Inter. Like his option quite appeared to be stay on not even heavily reduced wages. Like I think it was like more than half. He offered to take a lower contract, like stay on ridiculously reduced wages or move abroad and keep earning. I imagine the money he was more or less used to, and then they treated him as if he's decapitated the coach. So I'm not too surprised by the quote, but I think he's Fiorentina. Maybe if it happened in England, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But at the same time, I think Vlahovic has handled it fairly well overall. He maybe could have waited until the summer because Fiorentina are having a good season. That's the aspect of it. Like, why did you have to rush this move now? Like Fiorentina, challenger for European spaces for the first time in ages under a really good manager, Vincenzo Italiano. So that's the aspect you can hit of him. But overall, I'm not too bothered by Vlahovic, how he's handled himself.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as well, Fiorentina is probably the last opportunity for them to get the biggest fee possible, really, considering his contract was up in 2023. So I guess the move was going to happen. Obviously, the agents, you never know what they're doing. But now that Vlahovic is at Juventus, the pressure is going to be massively on himself and Max Allegri to get into that top four and get that Champions League football. How do you see him fitting in? Because at the moment, with Chiesa injured long term, do you see Juventus going with a 4-4-2 and partnering him with, say, a Morata or a Dybala, or potentially playing him as a lone striker through the middle, except they're obviously lacking options in the wide areas now. Now that Kulusevski's moved on, Chiesa out injured, that leaves them with Bernardeschi and maybe Cuadrado that could play there. So how do you see Vlahovic fitting in? And in the short term, how do you see kind of Allegri lining up that Juventus team?
I mean, as much sense as you've spoken there, Max Allegri has played Adrian Rabiot at left wing this season and left mid. So who knows who he might park out. He might force out that 4-3-3. And in fairness, the 4-3-3 is where they found form recently. And they started like a 4-4-2, like a striker partnership. I think it was Dybala and Morata early in the season. And it didn't quite work out. I think the best option would be, this is more of a standpoint to take whenever a striker moves, especially into a big club who's young. I think a partnership's best because you let Dybala play off the striker, which is his best thing. And having a striker partnership, two strikers up front, it takes the pressure off each one. And I think the last thing you want is Vlahovic to lead this 4-3-3 and have all the pressure on himself to score. Because let's not forget as well, not all of his goals have come from open play. I think over the past season, he's handled 10 or 11 penalty goals in the league. So over the last two seasons. So really, I think his goal tally's close to 40 goals, but in actuality, it's probably like between 25 and 30. It's not as high as like a Haaland, for example. So 4-4-2 / whatever formation that makes a striker partnership, get the pressure off Vlahovic's back and try and let him flourish.
I mean, and then last thing on Vlahovic before we move on, what sort of a player, are Juventus getting for those that don't know too much about him? Obviously, they're lowering the age of their squad, which is a big must-do for them. It's quite an aging squad they've got at the moment. They obviously desperately need to reduce that age. He ticks those boxes. Obviously, a great goal scorer, as we've seen at Fiorentina. What sort of profile of forward is he? And do you think he'll ultimately suit Juventus?
So Vlahovic, when you look at him straight away, he's quite tall, little bulky. You sort of think target man straight away. But if anything, that's kind of the area game he could work on, really. I'd say he's definitely a penalty box operator. He's quite good with the ball at his feet. I think he's quite technically good, but I think he could improve sort of his hold up and link up play a little. Once he's in the box, he's deadly. He's a little heavily one-footed, I'd say, on his left. I think he's only scored 2 right-footed goals since the start of last season. But that left foot is absolutely lethal. You give him even half a yard of the box, it just kind of generates the power. And what I think really stands out about Vlahovic is the accuracy of his shots. Like, I think he's outperformed his expected goals, which would suggest that maybe goalkeepers are giving him an easier time. But I from watching him, I'd say that he's just that good. He's just very good at just aiming shots into places where the goalkeepers cannot reach them. And I'll say the last thing as well, like I said, the stereotype is quite a tall target man. He's not. He's also quite quick, I think. There's a good goal I always reference. He scored earlier in the season against AC Milan, where he charged in behind, left the defence in his wake and rounded the keeper before quite calmly finishing. So I think the potential to be a really well-rounded striker for Juventus they've got.
And just staying with Juventus forwards before we move on to the rivals in midfield, do you feel this changes anything in regards to Paulo Dybala signing a new contract? Because at the moment he can leave on a free in the summer, I believe. Anything changing there with Vlahovic's arrival?
I'd say no, just because I think the Dybala contract situation, it's now morphed into something where it's the club at odds with him. Like, I don't know if you've seen earlier this year, I think Dybala scored a really nice goal for Juve.
Yeah, he looked up at the box, didn't he?
Yeah. So I think at this point, it's like whoever Juventus signed, Dybala's just going to want. For anyone who doesn't know, he was offered a contract back in October. Then lots of allegations broke out about Juventus not having money and faking financial mismanagement, things like that. Criminal proceedings, I think, going against them now, criminal investigations. So Juventus are like, we're not offering you the money we offered you. And Dybala has gone, well, you should offer me it, otherwise I'm not signing. And that's the impasse they're at.
And moving away from the forwards now, briefly onto midfield. Obviously, Bentancur's been moved on. They've still got Weston McKennie in there. But they've brought in a 25-year-old Denis Zakaria from Borussia Mönchengladbach, the Swiss kind of holding midfield player. Great deal, out of contract in the summer. Gladbach getting whatever they could for him. What do you reckon? What do you think of that move? And do you think he's going to do well for Juventus, do what they need him to do?
So he's a slight different player than Bentancur. Bentancur, I think when you see him come to Tottenham, even though he's very good on the ball, I think he holds it well. Really, he's defensive midfield. Like, he'll anchor the midfield. I expect him to play like very deep, and he rarely ventures to pass the sort of, but into the opposition penalty box. Never goes that far. Whereas I'd say with Zakaria, he's but benefits, I guess, a bit more in his ball carrying. Like, he will carry the ball with a lot of power, a lot of elegance, I think, as well. For, as I said, Swiss midfielder, he's about 6'2". He's quite strong. He did have a bad injury a couple of seasons ago, and he's not really captured that form just yet. But I think this season he's been a bit underrated. See, I think for Juventus, they've got a midfielder in who offers a bit of ball carrying that I can't really think any of their midfielders do offer in the way that he does. A sort of like, but it reminds me a bit of Moussa Dembele, Zakaria. So I think that's the sort of player they've got in.
Yeah, no, I think it's some great signs for Juventus and a really good window. I'm not going to go too much into the outgoings. Obviously, you mentioned Kulusevski and Bentancur, but one outgoing I do want to briefly touch on: Aaron Ramsey, the forgotten man. Obviously, on that ridiculous, I think it's about £400,000 a week contract, whatever it is. Juventus has been struggling to get rid of him. Of all places, he's ended up in the SPL at Rangers on loan. I can't imagine Rangers are paying much of his salary, if any at all. Briefly, your thoughts on that, and how has that deal kind of been structured, if you know?
I don't know anything about the structure. I'm inclined to believe, I don't know if you know Chris Hamill from Football Daily, he did a good tweet. He said maybe Rangers are paying for his national insurance. That's the only thing I can think of. I no words for Ramsey, because I don't know what sort of player he is now. He's just played barely any games. And he's on enough money to buy 1 million yachts. Whatever for Rangers. If it helps him win the title, I'm sure it's a good move.
I think it could be a good move, but as you say, like, it's so difficult to know how good Ramsey is now, because he's played more times for Wales than he has for Juventus in the last few seasons. So it's difficult to tell. But they need to get him out. I know they're probably still paying all, if not a large percentage of those wages. But I guess, like, for Ramsey in his career, he's 31, hasn't got that long left now. He needs a new challenge. But briefly sticking in Serie A, let's talk about Fiorentina. Vlahovic obviously gone. Ikone came in from Lille at the start of the window. They've done some other good, well, I say good business. They've obviously
it is good business.
That's good business, and also two players I'd like to talk to you about that probably I don't know a lot about, and I'm sure the viewers don't know too much about, is Piatek back in from Hertha Berlin and Cabral from Basel. So two forwards. I know Piatek was kind of well thought at Genoa. He went to AC Milan. I think he then went to Monaco. He was meant to be quite exciting, but things haven't really worked out at all. What do you make of his return to Serie A? Is that smart business by Fiorentina?
Yeah, I'm happy you asked me about these two. I was wondering if we would move on after, and I was going to try and force it in, but yeah. So Piatek, I think, is a good move. His career path was he went to Genoa, I believe it was, from Poland, and he scored a ridiculous amount of goals in the first half of the season. And AC Milan were like, well, we'll pick you up then. And for the second half of the season, and I don't think he ever hit more than 10 to 15 goals. And it was like a year later, he went to Hertha Berlin. And going to Hertha Berlin is a bit like going to Everton. They've got lots of money, but every player they sign ends up in a graveyard. So quite unsurprisingly, Piatek's never really set things alight in Hertha Berlin. But I think going to Fiorentina is a good move because, like I said, they're under a good coach. I think he can be in this Arthur Cabral, who's coming from Basel. Yeah, and you're probably going to ask about next. He's a really exciting player. He's scored. I'll get it up now because it's worth getting up because I've written on him for Breaking Lines and watched him quite extensively. I feel like when players come from a lesser league, for example, the Swiss league, it's quite easy to write them off and think they're playing in a league that's not challenging them, or like if they've scored like 10 to 20 goals, it's like, yeah, but you're doing it against these defenders. I think Cabral takes that to an extreme because you watch him, it's like watching a guy play with children. He's so clearly outgrown the league. His stats this season, he's got 14 goals in 18 games with 4 assists. He's got 5 goals in the UEFA Conference League in 6 games. Last season, he had like 18 goals as well. Brazilian striker is a bit like Vlahovic as well, so it makes sense. Quite tall, but I'd say from what we've seen of him at his level, at least, he looks, I think, a lot better with the ball at his feet. It's not a diss on Vlahovic, it's just I watch Cabral and I really do think he's like an all-rounded, well-rounded forward with good passing as well. And he's got an amazing highlights reel. I'm lucky to watch a couple of 90s on him for Basel, but his highlights reel, you can kind of get the gist of him. Like he scored like a couple of ridiculous volleys. He takes a lot of long shots, which are actually quite accurate as well. I'm really excited about Cabral. He's only 23 as well, so I really can't wait to see what he does in Serie A.
I mean, do you think, last thing on Fiorentina, do you think they've kind of, not obviously, they haven't really reinvested the Vlahovic money yet, but how well do you think they've done with those three, Ikone, Vlahovic, and Ikone, Cabral, and Piatek coming in? Do you feel that's kind of good business with Vlahovic outgoing? Do you think that will help them carry on their push for European football this season?
Yeah, absolutely. I've really kind of made my mind up recently in terms of you should never buy a player for plus 60 million pounds. If it gets to that point, just buy 2 for like 30 mil.
Yeah.
I think that was the worst thing Fiorentina have done. They've said, oh, we've lost Vlahovic, now let's get another big money move in just to replace him. I think they've replaced him quite nicely. Maybe it doesn't work out, but at least you've got 3 assets who should have resale value and should contribute in different ways. Like we won't go to Ikone too much, but he's a player who's going to contribute at least 5 to 10 goals. So I really like their business.
And just one more bit in Serie A. Inter Milan, obviously the champions, top of the league at the moment still. Robin Gosens, the Germany and Atalanta fullback, has joined on loan with an obligation to buy, so he's obviously an Inter Milan player now. Very briefly, thoughts on that move? Good move for Inter?
Yeah, I'm really happy about this. I want Inter to carry on sort of challenging for the title, and Gosens will help them do that. I think their beginnings get a little weaker down the left side, even though Perisic is doing quite well. So bringing in Gosens strengthens that. He is injured, so he's going to have to wait. But I think he got like 10 assists last season from left wing back. He's going to be awesome when he gets back to fitness. Yeah,
definitely. And I just wanted to ask you a couple of things about AC Milan very briefly. 2 moves that didn't happen, obviously. Ironically, 2 players from Lille. Sven Botman saying he had 2 offers this window, AC Milan and Newcastle. He's obviously going to consider his future in the summer. And Renato Sanchez possibly to AC Milan as well. Could you see either of those 2 players ending up at AC Milan in the summer?
Yeah, I could. Obviously, they're going to stay and beat your boys Chelsea in the Champions League.
Hopefully not.
But, yeah, I think the only reason they've stayed is because Lille have turned things around quite significantly. They haven't. I can't remember they've lost recently, to be fair, but let's say from like a couple of weeks ago, and then from then until November 9th, sorry, they hadn't lost a game. They were like unbeaten in the league for at least 10 to 15 games. Then that only lost came against PSG in like the 90th minute. So I think they've stuck with Lille just for now because they see they have potential to make history of the club. It's their first time ever in the Champions League knockout stages. And then in the summer, I reckon Milan will pick up one of them at least. Although Botman's good enough to move anywhere. And the thing is, Renato Sanchez is if he didn't have, I'd say, the worst injury record out of any player I've seen in the recent years. We talk about Coleman, who's got bad injuries. I think Renato Sanchez, I wouldn't sign him at all if I'm a top club. But if I can find proof that I will fix his body so he doesn't miss like 20 league games a season, I think Renato Sanchez will be an electric signing, particularly this season. I think if he's fit for the Chelsea game, you're going to see he is on fire at the moment.
I mean, could potentially replace Frank Kessie in that midfield if he moves on a free at the end of the season. So the possibilities there. But let's move to France now. Before we get on to PSG, I'd like to talk a bit about Lyon. Struggling a little bit this season under Peter Bosz. Things not going so well, shall we say, in the league. I feel they've done some really good business this window. Obviously, Bruno Guimaraes has moved on to the riches of Newcastle, but they have bought in Romain Favre from Brest. They've bought in Tanguy Ndombele on loan as well. What do you make of the business that Lyon have done? Obviously, starting with Guimaraes going out, too good of money to say no to in that situation for them?
Yeah, I think so. The way Aulas and Lyon work, this kind of joins the dots I think a lot of people have. Aulas has an internal price for every single player in his team. And he will say, we're not selling him, we're not selling him, we're not selling him until one person meets that price, and he will immediately let them go. So clearly with Guimaraes, that was what happened with him, why he's gone. Yeah, he's quite a big midfielder to replace too, because he's someone who could receive the ball deep, turn away from pressure, brilliant at playing through the lines, and then either carry it forward or play a long-rangey pass. So I think Ndombele, without the defensive work of Guimaraes, replaces that. Obviously, he's great under pressure and he's great at carrying the ball forward. So I think they've begun to replace him well, but still, it's got a big hole to fill.
I mean, obviously, in terms of midfield players, I mean, I know Guimaraes is gone, but Lyon have got technically some very good footballers in there, the likes of Paqueta, Romain Favre, and Ndombele. I just want to touch on one that perhaps people might not know so much about. Romain Favre kept coming in to that midfield at Lyon from Stade Brest. What can you tell the viewers about him? An exciting prospect, or is he a bit more than a prospect now?
Oh, I'd say he's a little bit more than a prospect.
Yeah.
The French will call him Romain Favre or Favre. Yeah, one of those. It's a hard one to pronounce in French, but yeah, he's moved from Stade Brest, who had a good season last year, in my opinion. He's had 7 goals and 5 assists this season. He kind of plays sort of across the pitch, played more in attacking midfield, I'd say. Yeah, he fits into this Lyon team because he's quite technically gifted. I think he's got a good eye for a pass as well. So I haven't been able to watch him too much at Brest, to be fair, but I'm quite excited for this because I think it's the sort of business we want to see Lyon make. They've really nailed it in recent years. You mentioned Paqueta. Quick note on him. Although Guimaraes is great, I think Lucas Paqueta could have the potential to be like a Champions League winner. He's incredible from what I've seen of him in France. Like, he's come on leaps and bounds since the move to Milan. I reckon he'll go within a season or two, and whoever gets him is like getting a stupidly good midfielder.
And I just wanted to quickly touch on Ndombele. Obviously, was at Lyon, got a club record move to Tottenham. He showed glimpses in his time there. Again, probably a big highlight is a lack of discipline in midfield. He's obviously gone back to Lyon now. They've got an option to buy him on loan for the rest of the season. How do you think he'll do? Do you think he can rediscover his form there and maybe go back to Tottenham next season and play a big part?
I'm not actually 100% convinced, because I think Ndombele, his fitness seems to be all over the place. And when he left France in 2019, I think Ligue 1 was quite far behind the other Big 5 leagues. But it shows in the stats as well, like the number of pressures teams make per game and like the goalkeeper performance, things like that. Ligue 1's come on leaps and bounds in the last 2 years. And one thing that I think Messi and Pochettino, the sort of Premier League people or La Liga people who've moved to France have confirmed, it's upblowing the Premier League with how physical it is. And by that, I mean the speed of the game, the speed that teams counter-attack you. And so I think Ndombele actually has to get his work out. It's not just going to be a simple thing of returning home. Ligue 1's changed since he's left. He's going to need to get his body in shape, and he's going to need to. He can't just take his foot off the accelerator. He's going to need to keep it on to make sure he stays with the pace of Ligue 1.
And moving away from Lyon now, obviously they've probably done the best business in Ligue 1 this window. I want to talk about PSG briefly. Obviously, no business done, no players, and I'm not sure there might have been some outgoings, of minimal ones. Haven't really.
I don't think they made any.
I don't think I've been made aware of anything. What do you make of what's going on there? Because Pochettino I don't know if he's doing a good job or not. You know, dumped out the cup by Nice in the week on penalties. He hasn't really, for me, I don't know if he's improved that side at all since he's been there. And I don't know what's going on at PSG. I mean, do you feel, one, what do you think's going on there? And two, do you feel they should have done some business this window?
Oh man, I've spent too many hours this season thinking on this exact topic because it's such a conundrum. Because I'm very glad, Charlie, that you're a sane person. Because most people, when you say Pochettino's not having a good season with PSG, they go, "Well, he's not doing very good, is he? He's winning the league by 5 or 6 points." And it's like, shut up! Like, everyone in France, PSG fan or not, has been underwhelmed by them. But what I've got to say from the outset, because I might slip into a rant about PSG. I have to say from the outset is that what's happening with Poch and PSG is quite predictable. He's only really coached in a certain way of playing, and PSG were not set up for that particularly well before the summer. And when they brought in Lionel Messi, they became even more anti. We're going to press high. Like, it's a match that doesn't work, so you can't blame Poch for that. But what you can blame him for is taking the job in the first place, because he took it and he said in a press conference, I'm not come here to do a grand big project or anything like that. I've come here to win trophies, try and win the Champions League. I've come here to adapt to PSG rather than PSG adapting to me. So it's his own fault for the situation he's in a lot of sense. But I think the connection between him and Leonardo has been awful. The sporting director, they're clearly on different planets in where they think the team needs to go. And the result of this is you watch PSG in the league, they've only recently kind of turned things on the tiniest bit, but there's very little way of attacking patterns. It's a bit like, and you're a Chelsea fan, it's a bit like the worst parts of Chelsea when you're playing West Ham and you can't break them down in any way, and it's sideways passing. Not sideways passing in your own half, but like when they're camped in the box, you go right, you can't move anything, so you move back into midfield, can't find anything, move it back across midfield, can't find anything, back to the left, can't find anything, back all the way across. That's what PSG are like pretty much every game. And they've relied, kind of like hinted earlier about Lille, on last-minute goals to win matches. And in the Champions League, we all saw against City, Messi, Neymar and Mbappe. I think that was their worst game ever as a trio. They're never usually that bad in terms of their defensive work. Neymar and Mbappe are actually quite good, but they look like they're on holiday. And it's all resulted as well with Lionel Messi, who you've probably seen the stat, 44 shots, 1 goal. Are
you surprised at how much he's struggled in Ligue 1 this season? I know in the Champions League he's done a bit better, but are you surprised at how difficult he's found it in the league?
I'm not actually... Okay, no. I can't pretend to be like, I saw this coming, but I guess... I'm a little surprised, but I'm not entirely shocked, really. Like, I'm not sitting there thinking, how's this happening? It took a couple of weeks to realise that even though he's best player in the world, I think transitioning from La Liga to France is very different. La Liga is like, it's the oldest league in Europe now. It's got an average age of just under 28 years old. So that means the majority of teams coming up against are old, experienced players. But it's fair to say some of them past their prime. And Simeone's Atletico Madrid has clearly had an effect on the league. There's a lot of teams now like Getafe playing quite brutal football, I'd say, but the speed of the game isn't quick. You'd do well to find a team relying on fast, quick, counter-attacking football in Spain. Whereas Ligue 1, that's what it's based on. it's the youngest league in Europe, so they can't really rely on experienced players. The majority of the league are made up of young, exciting French forwards who are really taking the game to other teams, and it runs down the team as well. Midfielders carry the ball up the pitch. So what's happened with Messi? He's gone from being able to be this quality player existing in Barcelona against maybe not the best La Liga teams who are good at sort of defensive shapes, but they're not as athletic, I'd say, compared to Ligue 1, where he's gone into Ligue 1 and he looks a bit like a fish out of water, to be honest. Obviously, it hasn't helped that it's a different system, and Poch took a while to find his position in the team. But you watch him and you just think, if his name wasn't Messi, you'd say he's a complete flop at PSG. That's the best conclusion I can give you.
No, that's fair. I think it's going to be a massive summer for PSG in the window. Mbappe obviously going to go to Real Madrid on a free transfer. They're going to have to.
It's not confirmed, to be fair.
No, it's not confirmed.
No. The rumors. There's a lot of reports in France actually. Like I think most reports.
He might stay.
Well, I think he's come out and said that I'm willing to discuss things. You know, like he loves Paris, so I think. If you want a prediction here that you can clip when he moves to Real Madrid in the summer, my prediction here is that he does end up signing a deal that has some sort of release clause. He stays with Messi for another year, maybe plays under Zidane, who looks like he's going to move to PSG, and then in 2023 he'll move to Madrid.
Yeah, I mean he's got time on his side, but I mean I personally feel he'll join this summer, but we'll obviously have to wait and see what happens there. Very last thing on Ligue 1, you mentioned young exciting forwards. I just wanted to talk about one who didn't move to Newcastle on deadline day, Hugo Ekitike at Stade Reims. What can you tell us about him? 19 years of age. Is he an exciting prospect? Is he someone that could go on to be pretty good?
Oh, my research has come off so well during this season. Ekitike, yeah. So as a young French forward, like I said, only 19 at Reims. Newcastle quite smart in targeting him, I'd say. Targeting him but not signing him. I don't think you should sign him yet. This is his first season properly in Ligue 1. Way I can describe him, there's sort of shades of... I'm trying to think the best way to describe it. I was going to say Ibrahimovic, but that strikes the wrong picture. He's not a giant, but it's just the way that he's quite tall, but he's so delicate with the ball of his feet. I've watched all of his goals and assists this season, and the one that really stands out, I think the best way to describe him, so it's a match against Lyon from Reims. It's a long shot that's come in to Anthony Lopez, and he spilled it. And Ekitike is the first person to react, and he charges into the box, and he manages to dink the ball over Lopez's head. So it's coming down. The goalkeeper's in no man's land pretty much, and Jason Denayer, who's a quality defender, by all accounts, he's very good in the Ligue 1, I think, and he's good for Belgium. He's chasing Ekitike down, and he's looking to block the shot, which is in the 6-yard box, probably about to be an open goal. Sure goal. Ekitike, a young forward, by the way, like I said, first season in France. He should be smashing this into the net. As it's come down, it almost like FIFA. He's fake shocked it. Sent Denayer to to the forest. He's gone sliding across the pitch, and then Ekitike sent him and very calmly tapped the ball in on his left foot. It just kind of showed his anticipation to get in for the rebound, his technical skill to just turn and sense and Denayer coming in and just send everyone ahead of everyone else, and then just to calmly tap it home. I think he's coming up to 10 goals in this league season now, at the lowest scoring team in France, pretty much, or one of the lowest scoring teams. I'm really excited about him. I've written for him for Breaking the Lines, like a lot of players, but I can safely say this is the most talented player I've watched this season, I'd say. Do
you think he'll be on the move this summer?
I hope not. I hope he stays in France for another year, or he moves to another French team, because this could all be one season wonder, to extend. Not say he'll be a flop for his career forever, but he needs to keep learning. He's not the fully finished package yet. I think he's trying to work on his defensive work rate, but I think he needs to stay in France, work on his game. But I reckon in 2 to 3 years, if he keeps going at the sort of track he's on, then this could be a really Vlahovic level player. But I'm really excited about him.
No, well, obviously have to keep tabs on him and see what happens to the rest of this season and across the summer. I just wanted to round out with quick talk in La Liga. Barcelona, they've obviously been the most active in this window with Aubameyang, Traore, Ferran Torres, and someone else coming in that I've forgotten now. There is one more. I'm pretty sure.
Get it up, don't you worry. I've got. I should say as well.
It's those three, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm currently
Danny Alves counts as well, doesn't he? I suppose.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm currently working on a piece which covers every transfer across Europe in the Big Five leagues and outside the Big Five leagues. So on my other screen, I've got a Google Doc of like the 6 transfers to Getafe, followed by the 4 transfers to Granada. So I was, you're spot with the Barcelona one.
Let's start with the most recent one, Aubameyang. I think that I'm not sure if that surprised people or not. I was slightly surprised by it, given a few years ago Xavi had said he's not something along the lines of he's not the right personality for Barcelona. But obviously, time could be a good healer, and he's in the squad now. What do you make of their deal to sign him? I mean, did you feel they needed a centre forward? They also brought in Ferran Torres, who can play there. They've got Memphis Depay, who seems to have gone off the ball a little bit. Braithwaite is also there. What do you make of the Aubameyang to Barcelona deal?
So Barcelona have got an issue this season in terms of they're creating half chances, but they can't finish these half chances off. Like, it's not a case of they need a striker to bury open goals, but they need a striker, I guess, to make that extra step to create something. I think old Aubameyang could do that, but Aubameyang, I'm on the extreme end of this, but I think signing Aubameyang at this point is quite a bad decision. I actually rate Arsenal for getting him off his books. Not just because of the personality, but actually for his goal output. Do you know, since 16-17 at Arsenal, I think even at Dortmund and Arsenal, since then, every season he has scored less and less league goals. There's one season where he tied, I think it was 18-19, 19-20. He had 22 in each one. But then it was 10, and this season it's less as well. So I think this is a player actually quite evidently on the decline. And maybe he can resurrect sort of form in Barcelona, like we've seen it before. Players we write off, go to a big club they've always wanted to go to, and bring things back. But truthfully, I'm not too hot on this move. And you'll probably sense this tone for every Barcelona signing here.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how it works out. I mean, what do you mean? Do you think you could see him playing with Ferran Torres, or do you think it will be one or the other? I mean, what does it mean for Memphis Depay as well?
I don't know. I rated Memphis Depay as the best signing in the summer. So I don't know. I don't know what. I guess Torres on the right. He's played a bit there, I think, since he's come in. Aubameyang down the middle, maybe Aubameyang down the left. Depay in the middle. I don't know. Xavi, I think he's shown himself fairly well so far this season, but it's a bit of a puzzle to work out.
And so just on Ferran Torres, do you think that's a good sign for Barcelona? Because obviously they spent big money on him. Do you think he'll ultimately be successful there? Do you think it's the kind of the profile they need? I mean, they're obviously looking at Xavi's looking at revamping the squad in terms of getting a young Spanish core there. So they've got Pedri, Gavi. I mean, even Nico's played to an extent as well. Got Ferran Torres as well. Do you feel like that's what Xavi's trying to do, and Torres can be an important part of that?
I guess so. I mean, I think a lot of people are hot on the Ferran Torres transfers. You'll hear the other side of it. I'm a little wary just of the fee they've paid. I think, by all accounts, he's quite a quality player, but he has a very small sample size overall in his career, I believe. I don't think he played much in Spain, like too much. He's barely played, like by City standards, he hasn't played that much at all, I don't think. So, I don't know. I just think they've committed like 50 million euros to him. They need this guy to be the future of their attack. They need him to be a superstar. And he's 21 now. And I don't know, is he showing signs of being a nailed-on superstar? I think it's arguable, that he is and isn't. So I'm not 100% sold on this move. I think it's good. Like, overall, it's good. But they've committed a lot of fees. And if it means they can't make other signings, then I'm not like, Torres better hope that he hits the ground running.
I mean, last 2 bits on Barcelona before we round out. Adama Traore, loaned for 6 months with an option to buy for, I think, 35 million euros. Laporta saying today at Traore's presentation that their plan is to activate that clause. How do you see Adama Traore doing at Barcelona, very briefly?
Well, unless they've got the best attacking coach in the world who could train Traore to be as lethal as he is in the box as he is outside of it, then I don't see what this move's about. Especially since they brought in Aubameyang. Like you mentioned earlier, how are you going to fit Aubameyang, Depay and Torres into the same front three? Where does Traore go? Is it they're going to spend £35 million on what it looks like? It's going to be a backup option. Maybe they will. Maybe they haven't. Like maybe Barcelona will make this sort of decision. I know it's a new board, but they've made bad decisions in the past. So I think this is actually on paper the worst move, because I think he made sense to Spurs as a right wing back. I think everything about that, like on paper, made sense. Barcelona, though, unless they're going to play him as a really attacking right back, he's not going to play in the front three. So I don't see the point.
Yeah, I mean, they've already got a couple of those in Dani Alves and Dest anyway. So I'm not really sure. Don't really know where Traore is going to play. But final question on Barca. Sorry, they obviously for the Europa League they can't register all four of those signings. So one of Torres, Aubameyang, Traore, or Dani Alves is going to have to be left out of that squad. Who do you think they're going to leave out?
Oh, that's perfect. I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me that.
Yeah, one of them's got. I'm pretty certain that's the case. I mean, if I've completely made that up, then I do apologise. But I'm pretty certain that's the case. That one of those signings they can't register for all four of them for the Europa League squad.
Well, I'm not googling that straight. I'm googling Dani Alves' appearances because the obvious answer is 38-year-old Dani Alves. But I've watched Barcelona twice since he came in. I think he started both games. I'm just double checking that now because if he has, then it's not a very easy decision at all. So La Liga. I started one game in La Liga to be fair. So I don't know. It's he played 2 games of the Copa del Rey as well. Dani Alves, I guess, makes sense on paper, but that means oh no, Xavi's gonna have to use the excited wonder kid, Serginho Dest, that he doesn't like. God, who knows? Who knows at this point? Maybe they'll take out Ferran Torres for the banter.
It's certainly an interesting situation for them to be in. Before we round out, very quickly, I want to ask about Ousmane Dembele. He seems to be just being offered around all over the place. He's not going to be at Barcelona next season. Chelsea strongly linked with him. Rumours of a move to PSG. I'm not going to ask you about his future, but how do you see him being utilised for the rest of this season? Because Barcelona are clear they don't want him there. They've left him out of squads in the past. What do you think Xavi's going to ultimately do with him? Because he could be a useful player for him.
Yeah, Xavi came out and said we want him to stay. We actually really like him before it really started to blow up. I think I saw a statement today from Barcelona's president that said, listen, we're not going to create drama with Dembele. If he's leaving, he's leaving, but he can stay for the rest of the season and try and contribute to our season. So I hope that all parties take things maturely and he does continue to play for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think would make the most sense. Then obviously he can move on in a free in the summer. But that seems like a good point to round out. Alex, thanks so much for your time and your insight as always, mate. Always a pleasure. Guys, make sure you follow him on socials, on Twitter, subscribe to YouTube, TikTok, check those all out. Mate, have you reached 10K on Twitter yet? Or will you just believe?
I think I'm like 8 followers off. We'll have a look. I am 10 followers off.
10 followers off, guys. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. Get him to that 10K. Check out all his stuff. Some great content. All things across Europe. Mate, thanks for your time as always, guys. Make sure you smash a like on this video. Please do continue subscribing to the channel. Appreciate all of your support. And I'll catch you again in the next couple of days where we'll be doing a match preview for Chelsea versus Plymouth in the FA Cup. So thanks for tuning in. Cheers.